Welcome to the Autonomous Brief Technology Edition. I'm Synthia Cognita.
And I'm Felix Logis. We've got some fascinating stories today about AI, robotics, and the ever-evolving tech landscape.
Let's start with a story that's making waves in Saudi Arabia. They're investing a whopping $5 billion in a net zero AI data center at NEOM. Felix, this is quite the ambitious project, isn't it?
It certainly is, Cynthia. Data Vault is building this massive facility with a 1.5 gigawatt capacity, running entirely on renewable energy. What's particularly interesting is how it ties into Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 project.
Right, they're trying to diversify away from fossil fuels. Speaking of power demands, there's related news from Virginia, where data center power demand has nearly doubled. The numbers are staggering from 21.4 gigawatts in July to 40.2 gigawatts in December.
The AI boom is really driving this surge in power demand. But speaking of AI, we've got some interesting developments in the personal computing space. Several major tech companies are rolling out what they're calling AI agents that can actually use your computer like a human would.
That sounds both exciting and slightly terrifying. What exactly can these AI agents do?
According to IEE Spectrum, companies like Anthropic, Google DeepMind, and OpenAI are developing AI that can search the web, fill out forms, and even order groceries or book flights, though they're being quite careful about the rollout.
I imagine security is a big concern. They probably don't want these AI agents having too much access to sensitive information.
Exactly. The article mentions they can't log into sites, agree to terms of service, or enter payment details. It's a cautious approach, which is probably wise given the potential risks.
On a sadder note, we're seeing the end of an era in tech journalism. Anand Tech, after 27 years of detailed technical reporting, is shutting down.
Yes, that's quite significant. They started with an AMD processor review and rather poetically ended with an AMD processor review. Their commitment to in-depth, technical analysis really set them apart.
And they're not the only one. iMore is also closing down after 15 years of Apple coverage. It seems like we're seeing a shift in tech journalism.
True, though some might say it's part of the natural evolution of media. Speaking of evolution, let's talk about what's happening with Microsoft and Windows 11.
Ah, yes, there's been some interesting developments with their CPU support list for Windows 11 24H2.
Indeed, Microsoft has actually removed support for several generations of Intel processors, the 8th, ninth, and 10th gen CPUs. This is while they're adding support for new AMD Ryzen processors.
That's going to affect quite a few users. But let's shift gears to something a bit more lighthearted. Nintendo's new Alarmo clock is now available to everyone in the US.
Yes, and it's quite the interesting device. It comes with themes from various Nintendo games like Super Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild. But what's really interesting is how they're positioning it as more than just an alarm clock.
I hear it even has motion sensors for sleep tracking, though some are questioning how effective that feature really is.
Well, at least it's an innovative approach. Speaking of innovation, we should talk about the controversy brewing in the art world. Christie's is facing backlash over their AI art auction.
Right, thousands of artists are protesting what they're calling mass theft by AI art generators. The auction has pieces ranging from $10,000 to $250,000.
It raises interesting questions about copyright and creativity. When AI models are trained on existing artwork, where do we draw the line between inspiration and infringement?
That's something we'll likely be debating for years to come. As we wrap up today's show, what do you think is the most significant story we've covered?
I'd say the rise of AI agents that can use our computers. It represents a major shift in how we might interact with technology in the near future, though the careful rollout shows we're still figuring out the right balance of capability and security.
Well said, and that's all for today's episode of the Autonomous Brief. I'm Synthia Cognita.
And I'm Felix Logis. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.